Right now, somewhere in America, a snake longer than your car is swallowing an animal whole. A hornet the size of your thumb is wiping out an entire beehive in hours, and a fish that can survive on land is crawling toward the next pond. This isn't science fiction. This is happening in your backyard. Every year, the United States spends over $120 billion fighting a war it's slowly losing, not against another country, but against animals that were never supposed to be here. Today, we're counting down the 10 invasive species turning America's ecosystems into a battlefield, and the last one on this list might already be closer than you think. Number 10. The giant African land snail. It sounds almost comical, a snail, but this one can grow up to 8 inches long, as big as a small rat, making it one of the largest land snails on Earth. It entered the U.S. through the exotic pet trade and religious ceremonies that used it as a symbolic offering, and once released, Florida's warm, humid climate turned out to be the perfect home. This snail isn't picky. It eats over 500 different plant species, even the stucco on houses, for the calcium, and it reproduces terrifyingly fast. Each snail is a hermaphrodite that can fertilize itself, laying up to 1,200 eggs a year. One smuggled snail can become a full infestation within months. Worse, it can carry a parasitic rat lungworm that causes a rare form of meningitis in humans. Transmitted just by touching its slime or eating unwashed produce it crawled across, Florida has launched 2 multi-million-dollar eradication campaigns in the 1960s and again since 2011, and isolated colonies still keep resurfacing. Number 9. The northern snakehead. If you designed the perfect invasive predator in a lab, it might look like this. Native to China and Russia, it likely entered U.S. waters in the early 2000s through released aquarium, fish, or live food markets. It has a primitive lung-like organ that lets it breathe air directly, surviving out of water for up to 4 days as long as it stays moist. Using its fins, it can actually wriggle across land to reach a new pond. Earning it the nickname Frankenfish once established, it becomes an apex predator with almost no natural enemies here, eating nearly anything that fits in its mouth: fish, frogs, even small birds. In Maryland's Potomac watershed, populations have exploded so badly that wildlife agencies now tell anglers to kill every single one they catch. No catch and release, no exceptions. Number 8. The emerald ash borer. Not every invader needs teeth or venom. Sometimes patience is enough. This metallic green beetle, barely half an inch long, is native to Asia and likely arrived hidden in wooden shipping material, first detected near Detroit in 2002. Its damage is nearly invisible from outside. Larvae tunnel beneath a tree's bark, cutting off its ability to move water and nutrients. A healthy ash tree can die within 2 to 4 years, and by the time its leaves visibly thin, it's usually too late. This single species has killed hundreds of millions of ash trees across 35+ states and parts of Canada, forcing cities to remove dead, hazardous trees at massive cost. Total economic damage is estimated at over $10 billion, and climbing, all from an insect small enough to balance on your fingertip. Number 7. The red imported fire ant. They arrived from South America nearly a century ago, hidden in soil used as ship ballast at a port in Alabama. Nobody noticed until it was too late. Today, they've spread across more than 260 million acres of the southern U.S., from Texas to Florida to North Carolina. A single colony can hold over 200,000 ants, and when disturbed, they don't scatter, they attack as one. Their sting causes a burning, blistering welt, and for people with allergies, it can be fatal. They're also drawn to electrical currents, chewing through wiring and air conditioners, traffic lights, even airport equipment, causing short circuits and roughly $6 billion a year in damage and control costs combined. Number 6. The Asian giant hornet, nicknamed the murder hornet. At 2 inches long, it's the largest hornet on Earth, with a stinger long enough to pierce a beekeeping suit. But its real weapon is strategy. A small group can locate a honeybee hive, mark it with a pheromone, then return for a coordinated slaughter, decapitating thousands of bees in hours to claim the hive for their own larvae. When first spotted in Washington state in 2019, entomologists panicked because American honeybees have no defense against this kind of attack, unlike their Japanese counterparts. And bees pollinate a third of everything we eat, so an unchecked spread could have hit food production hard. Number 5. Asian carp, arguably America's most infamous invasive fish. They were brought in during the 1970s to clean algae out of fish farms and sewage lagoons. But floods hit the Midwest, containment ponds overflowed, and the carp escaped into the Mississippi River system. A single female can lay up to 2 million eggs in one season. These fish now dominate entire stretches of the Mississippi and Illinois rivers, sometimes making up over 90% of the total fish biomass, leaving almost nothing for native species to eat. Silver carp also leap out of the water when startled by boat engines, sometimes 6 feet into the air, hard enough to break bones on impact. Right now, the only thing standing between these fish and the Great Lakes is an electric barrier in a canal near Chicago. Number 4. Feral hogs. Descended from escaped domestic pigs and Eurasian wild boar brought over for hunting, feral hogs now number more than 6 million across at least 35 states. And that number keeps climbing, because a single sow can produce 2 litters a year, with up to a dozen piglets each time. They're not picky eaters, and that's the problem. Feral hogs root through soil searching for food, tearing up farmland, golf courses, levees, and wetlands in the process. They destroy crops, contaminate water sources, and prey on the eggs and young of native species like ground-nesting birds and sea turtles. The damage adds up to an estimated $2.5 billion a year in the U.S. alone. And unlike most invasive species, hogs are smart enough to learn and avoid traps, making them one of the hardest animals on this list to actually control. Number 3. The European green crab. Roughly the size of your palm, this crab doesn't look like much of a threat, until you see what it does to a coastline. First introduced to the East Coast in the 1800s, likely through ship ballast water, it has since spread to the Pacific Northwest, where it's now considered one of the most destructive marine invaders in the world. Green crabs devour native shellfish. Clams, oysters, mussels, often faster than local fisheries can replenish them. But their real damage is structural. They burrow into and shred the root systems of coastal marshes and eelgrass beds, habitats that protect shorelines from erosion and serve as nurseries for countless other species. In some parts of New England and Atlantic Canada, entire salt marshes have collapsed, largely because of green crab activity. And once that root structure is gone, it can take decades to grow back, if it ever does. Number 2. The brown rat, also known as the Norway rat. Before we reach number 1, here's a reminder that not every apex invader looks exotic. The brown rat has followed human trade routes for centuries, and today it's established in virtually every state, thriving anywhere humans do. Cities, farms, ports, sewers. A single breeding pair can produce over 15,000 descendants in a single year under ideal conditions. Rats contaminate an estimated 20% of the world's food supply through droppings, urine, and gnawing. And they're carriers of more than 35 diseases that can spread to humans, including hantavirus and leptospirosis. In coastal and island ecosystems, they're even more devastating. Rats are responsible for the extinction or near extinction of numerous native bird species that evolved with no defense against a ground predator that can climb, swim, and squeeze through a gap the width of a coin. And finally, number 1. The Burmese python. If there's one species that defines this entire war, it's this one. Native to the jungles of Southeast Asia, Burmese pythons entered the U.S. through the exotic pet trade in the 1970s and 80s. Sold as babies the size of a shoelace, but capable of growing over 16 feet long and weighing more than 200 pounds. When owners realized what they'd taken on, some released them into the wild. Others simply escaped during storms, including Hurricane Andrew in 1992, which is believed to have destroyed a breeding facility and let hundreds loose into the Everglades. South Florida's climate turned out to be almost identical to their native habitat. Warm, wet, and full of prey, with zero evolutionary experience dealing with a python this size, and the results have been catastrophic. Studies in Everglades National Park have documented population crashes of over 90% for raccoons and opossums, nearly 99% for opossums in some survey areas, and complete disappearances of marsh rabbits and foxes from areas where pythons are established. These aren't small declines. They're the functional collapse of the mammal food chain in one of America's most iconic ecosystems. Pythons here have no natural predators. They can lay up to 100 eggs in a single clutch. They're masters of camouflage, capable of staying completely motionless and invisible in the grass just feet away from a hiking trail. And because the Everglades spans over 1.5 million acres of dense, swampy terrain, actually finding them is almost impossible. Officials estimate hunters and researchers combined remove only a small fraction of the total population each year, even with tools like radio-tagged scout snakes used to track down breeding females. Florida has tried everything. Bounty hunts offering cash per python, annual python challenge that draws hunters from around the world, and detector dogs trained to sniff them out. And still, wildlife officials openly admit this is not a battle they expect to win. At this point, the goal isn't eradication, it's containment, trying to stop the python from spreading further north as winters grow milder with climate change. Before we close out, one more invader you should know about. Because unlike everything else on this list, it's not in a swamp. It's in your garden right now, and you might not even know it. They're called jumping worms, nicknamed crazy snake worms for how violently they thrash when picked up. Native to East Asia, they likely spread through the horticultural trade, hiding in potted plants, mulch, and fishing bait. Unlike regular earthworms, they devour organic matter in topsoil at an alarming rate, stripping forests of the leaf litter that seedlings and insects depend on. They can reproduce without a mate, and researchers have already confirmed them in over 30 states, with no effective way to eliminate them once established. Here's the bigger picture. Every species on this list arrived the same way, through us. A pet released because it grew too big, cargo with a hidden passenger, a solution that became a bigger problem. Once these animals are here, there's rarely a way to fully undo it. The best we can usually do is contain and slow the damage. But you can help. Never release a pet, plant, or fish into the wild. Clean your boots, boats, and gear before moving between natural areas. And if you spot something that doesn't belong, report it to your local wildlife agency. Early detection has made the difference more than once on this list. So, which of these 10 surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe if you want to see which invasive species are taking over other parts of the world next. This war isn't just happening in America. It's happening everywhere.